Ozzie Jurek joins me on the line now. You know, Ozzie, one of the themes that you and I have had has been sort of the amazing shock as we sat back and and watched as, Canadian governments at all three levels, especially in the province of Ontario and British Columbia, federally, of course, and municipally in Vancouver and Toronto, have gone after the real estate market. And one of the prized things they've done it with is the new, or the stress test that first was applied to insured mortgages, then got extended to uninsured mortgages. And this week we got the first hint of how dramatic an impact that has.
Yeah, no question. Mortgage professionals put out a report that said 18% of Canadian homebuyers can't pass the stress test. So the statistics show it. You and I talked about it actually last year, where we looked for a 20% decline, so pretty darn close. So 100,000 Canadians have been prevented from buying their preferred home now.
What I found incredible about that, well, I was going to say what I found incredible, Ozzie, is that they would have qualified to buy the home of their choice, like completely qualified if it was just at the existing mortgage rate. But the stress test says you got to qualify as if it's 2% higher. So that's one thing. But this, despite the fact, I check all the time on what the delinquency numbers are. Who's 90 days or more in arrears on their mortgage. And come on, in British Columbia, for example, it's 0.15%. Across the country, it's 0.24%. So it's not a problem.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is that we don't complain at all about a 26% interest rate on a credit card, or which I really think is something to really be concerned about when we have a mortgage that on average is around the 3% level and the payments are very much in line. You made a point earlier at 7:45. By the way, everybody should listen to that promo. I think between you and Jill, you're a comedy team. But you made the point
Ozzie, you're right. She thinks I'm a joke. Go ahead.
See what I mean? Anyhow, the point is, as you said, we have no problem in the mortgage side. If there's a problem, I usually would find it in the home equity loan, which people sometimes use like my own private bank account or a credit card extension. Because it's available, it maybe seduces me into buying the new car now or the new piece of furniture. But in terms of mortgages, we have no default. The crazy thing, though, is I'm not too concerned about the stress test for Vancouver and Toronto. Maybe it's even a good thing to cool these markets down. But with one brush, we swept right across Canada. You take a small town. Let's take in Kootenays, where, say, the average price is about $200,000 to $300,000. Let's say the person buys some for $225,000. He scrapes together $25,000, has a $200,000 mortgage. At 3.8%, the payment is about $1,030. He needs $45,000 income with no stress test. Now, the same property, the same mortgage interest that he's getting, but he has to qualify at 5.8%. Now the income needed is $54,000. Well, you say that's not that much difference. That's all the difference between him getting the house and not getting the house, between getting the backbone of Canadian wealth and growth to buy that first piece of property. That's the difference in a small town. It's huge.
Well, coming back to Vancouver and Toronto, whether it's a good thing to cool the market, I would say it's a very good thing to have focused on dirty money coming into those markets. 100%. That'd be top of my list. The foreign buyer issue is still a little more complicated, depending on what you're talking about. If you're talking absentee, non-resident, that kind of stuff, you absolutely have to know where the money's originated from, which is a very difficult task. And others, other jurisdictions have tried it. But beyond that, I still think it was up to the financial institutions and the individual, but the financial institutions to lend according to the lending rules, especially when they apply the stress test to uninsured, mortgages that someone put 20% down or more down. My goodness, they're doing the right thing. I just, as I say, I think there was a lot wrong, but you hit it right in the head when you said it was a one-size-fits-all kind of approach to the marketplace, when clearly we had two sort of unique markets. I just find, listening today from Edmonton and Calgary, the idea that you need to slow the market is ridiculous. after 5 years or 4 years. Yeah, so
particularly when it's almost like you knowingly shoot your income source. In British Columbia, we have 23 billion in annual GDP, some 233,000 well-paying and family-supporting jobs across the province, all related to the real estate industry, whether it's developers and from the lawyer to the real estate commission to the stove and fridge manufacturer, and 1,000 things are all part of that. And in fact, developers and construction real estate is the number one contributor to the BC economy, and it seems to me that we are taking sort of a shot at the whole thing. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do with the taxes that we're not collecting?
Well, I can't help but make this comment is that, so they took aim at the number one industry in BC, but let's not forget the British Columbia NDP Green government's taken aim at the number one industry in Alberta, too. Not enough to just derail the number one industry in British Columbia by their opposition to getting oil to the Tidewater. They're taking aim at the number one industry in Alberta at the same time. It's a head shaker. And you listen to Greg Weldon earlier, and you can hear the challenges that are out there, that walking on eggshells, because of the size of the debt that's out there, but other things, unfunded liabilities, political instability, derivative market in the banking system. I just am going to really be interested how history views this approach to derail this such an important market. And here's the other thing, Ozzy, I'll just throw at you. In British Columbia, especially for the greater Vancouver area, they always talk about affordable housing, and not even going into the rules that make it less affordable. But the government says it wants to have a partnership with the private sector. I don't see it because of the rules that have just gone in to make it less attractive to invest in housing.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's a worthwhile goal of the NDP, saying it wants to build 114,000 affordable houses. That's great. But it also says that they're relying on partnership with the private sector. Well, gosh, I mean, would you, in charge of a Canadian pension fund or a big corporation, would you invest in new purpose-built housing projects in sort of this new tax and regulation world where we have foreign buyer tax increases, speculation tax, which, by the way, is aimed at all British Columbians and certainly people from the rest of Canada who have to pay if they want to invest here. The school tax, which isn't just, it's sort of confusing when we say it's houses over $3 million. You say, well, they can afford it. But it also applies to all development sites purchased to build all forms of housing, including purpose-built rental. And so all residential development sites over $3 million in Vancouver, well, there are no others. They're all over $3 million. They have now, I think, an unintended consequences of undermining that housing affordability. It's like, I don't know who makes a decision, but everything is tied to apply to everything else without exception.
And as I say, I mean, it's just going to be fascinating going forward. But Ozzy, let's come back with a hot property for us. Put a smile on my face if you got a couple.
Yeah, well, first of all, in Courtenay, we got a amazing ocean views, completely renovated interior, half-an-acre lot. It's a fairy tale setting, the owner says. And you can also build a carriage straight house or coach house on it as an assumable 5-year mortgage at 2.6%, and it's on at $715,000. Then we got 4 lots, 2 waterfront, 2 semi-waterfront on the Fraser River, all sewer, hydro, everything in gated community, and it's on at $96,000 for all 4. I'm just thinking before I let you go, I'm thinking of the other challenge, of course, that's always been a supply problem if you're looking at Greater Vancouver because of the net interprovincial migration, and you've got immigration coming in, and the numbers are still there. Well, that is, to me, the backbone, because last year we've had an astounding 49,900 people from international migration and 10,000 from inter-province migration. That's huge, because values go where people go. Yep. And, I'm right now in Secret Cove Marina. I'm surrounded by beauty and pristine surroundings, and I've traveled from Lescadia Island to Thormanby Island and all those glorious areas here, full of boats, full of people. And we think that's why people come here. But they come also for the safety of our banks, for the safety of our environment. And that's going to continue. And as long as they're going to keep coming, imagine 50,000 people. That means in a 2-person household, we need 25,000 units we have to build for rent or for ownership. And that'll be the backbone of our market.
And that's what's got to be focused on, absolutely. Ozzy, you go out and have a great weekend. By the way, I'm nominating you for mayor of Secret Cove at this point. And I'll be running your campaign. Or Admiral.
Accepted. By the way, just quickly, on your show, we talked about buying condos here for $46,000. That included a boat slip 15 years ago.
Oh, I remember it well.
Today, that boat slip is worth more.
Yeah, it's more than that.